This is number 12 in the series on the book, The Man Who Tapped the Secrets of the Universe, the story of Walter Russell. And in this one, it's entitled Inspiration. We're going to explore connecting to the mind of the universe, tapping into that constant flow of all the ideas you need to do whatever is in front of you, how to go within and know just what you need to do. If you enjoy watching, please click the like button and subscribe to our channel too. Also, feel free to share with your friends. And if you wish to make a donation to Unity Orlando, please go to our website at unityorlando.org and click on the Donate Now button. Today, let's explore the power of real inspiration. Inspiration. That's what we're going to talk about. Inspiration is essentially the third principle for demonstrating inner genius, at least the third one that's mentioned in this little book, The Man Who Tapped the Secrets of the Universe, by, it's about Walter Russell, but we're quoting him in here. So, let's start off with what he says about how one essentially becomes inspired and what inspiration is all about. Excuse me. Please remember, this is a guy who lived off inspiration. I mean, just about every moment of his life, he lived off inspiration. He was someone who was an inspired artist. Became a sculptor because someone needed a sculptor and did a masterpiece the very first time with no training. And he claimed it was through inspiration, that is, connecting to the mind of the universe and just having the mind of the universe tell him how to do it. He was a well-respected scientist with a fourth grade education, at least a fourth grade formal education. But a lot of his scientific understanding came from inspiration. It came from that experience in which he moved into the light. And while in the light, saw what were the causes behind this world we live in. And he translated into scientific terms, and other scientists took his concepts, went out, expanded on them, and got Nobel Prizes. He was an architect, a horseman, an ice skater, whatever he took on, he became excellent at. And he always claimed that was due to his connection to inspiration inside of himself, that he could go within himself, and there was this connection, maybe this voice, maybe this knowing that erupted, and he would know how to do whatever it was he needed to take on. So I think this is a guy worth listening to when he talks about inspiration. Let's see what he has to say. This is actually page 42 through 48. For those who go, oh my God, well, there's some picture pages, and I'm not reading all of it. Here we go. Inspiration comes only to those who seek it with humility toward their own achievements and reverence towards the achievements of God. I'm going to repeat this several times. Inspiration comes only to those who seek it with humility toward their own achievements and reverence toward the achievements of God. Right up front, he's telling you the attitude you've got to maintain if you want to allow that which is greater than yourself to move through you. With love of your work, love of life, and reverence for the universal force which gives you unlimited power for the asking, you may sit on top of the world if you desire to sit there.
Flashes of inspiration come only to those who plug into the universe and become harmonious with its rhythms by communion with it. Inspiration and intuition, well, that is the language of light through which men and God intercommunicate. Ask and you shall receive. You must yourself do the asking. In my philosophy is a passage which reads, mediocrity is self-inflicted, genius is self-bestowed. Many have asked if I could specifically direct them as to how to kindle the inner fire which illumines the way to oneself. Well, that I cannot do. I can merely point the way and tell you of its existence. You must then find it for yourself. Sounding very much like Jesus Christ, who said, you will find for yourself the light of life, right? I can merely point the way and tell you of its existence. You must then find it for yourself. The only way you can find it is through being alone with your thoughts at sufficiently long intervals to give that inner voice within you a chance to cry out in distinguishable language to you, here I am within you. That is the silent voice, the voice of nature, which speaks to everyone who will listen. Lock yourself up in your room or go out in the woods where you can be alone. When you are alone, the universe talks to you in flashes of inspiration. You will find that you will suddenly know things which you never knew before. You do not have to learn anything. In fact, all you have to do is recollect it or recognize it, for you already have it in your spiritual inheritance. By meditation and communion with God and talking to Him, I mean not just sitting silently in prayerful attitude as though separate and apart from God, adopting a faith and a belief state of mind, but I mean actually becoming one with Him, desiring with Him as co-creator of all things, desiring without words. I believe that every man can multiply his own ability by almost constant, wordless realization of his unity with his source. I have myself made that feeling so much a part of me that I actually feel myself to be an extension of the source, that my works are not my own, but interpretations of this source. I believe that such constant realization keeps one so exalted with inspiration that one is thus insulated from thousands of distractions which lead one away from his own design of life and thus protects him from the petty temptations, from disease, and from those man-made harms which constantly come to those who are not thus one with God. Okay. Inspiration. First rule, nobody can do it for you. Nobody can teach you how. Ain't that a rough first rule? You know, we just want to find a teacher, sit down and teach us how. There are a lot who say they'll teach you how. But the truth is, just as Jesus said, you will find for yourself the light of life. He couldn't be the light of life for you. You have to, if you're going to follow in His footsteps, actually find it within yourself. Inspiration's the same way. It can be talked about. It can be said it is out there. We can talk about the attitudes that put you in its path. We can talk about the type of experience that you can pursue. Notice he got very nuts and bolts about it. Go in your room and lock the door, go out in the woods, I don't care, but get away from people. And for this society in which we have to have the TV running in the background so we don't feel alone. Now, I have a bugaboo about that, so if that's your thing, don't worry. It's just my thing to say so. Amen. But this idea of being alone, very few people understand the real power of being alone for an extended period of time. It is amazingly empowering. You will touch things you've never touched before. You will come out with a confidence and an inner centeredness about life you've just never really touched before. And this is nuts and bolts. He's saying, if you do this, you'll get there. But he doesn't tell you exactly, do this and this will happen. He said, seek and you will find is about as much guidance as he's giving here. He's given you a few ideas about how to seek. But the bottom line is inspiration. Each of us has to find it for ourselves. And unfortunately, my experience is it's a lifelong project. Okay? Well worth the effort. Is it not so wonderful to know that I'm not the one making all the decisions, that there is something moving through me that is a lot wiser than I am, that inspires me? Well, there were several things he said. Mediocrity is self-inflicted. That's when we decide we're going to stay in our outer ego. You are inflicting upon yourself mediocrity because these personalities are nothing more than mediocre at best. And genius is self-bestowed. That surrender to a higher mind thinking through you. That's what we all admire and go, wow, how did you come up with that? I didn't. It just happened through me. It just popped into my mind. Wouldn't that be nice? That's genius. So, lock yourself in your room, go into the woods, take a time of retreat. And if that time is 3 minutes every morning, so be it. Or 20 minutes. Or if you have the luxury of being able to go out for yourself, do so. I have had the luxury in my life upon a number of times of spending nearly 2 months alone. Oh, once a week I'd go into town, get supplies, and with the cashier behind the counter, I was Chatty Cathy. That's the way it went down, you know. But the rest of the time I was alone. There's a sense of confidence that comes out of that, a sense of courage, a lack of fear. And I was alone out in a place where you didn't see anybody drive by on the road for days. My parents' place, which at that time no one lived out there but them, or they had a house out there. 13 miles of dead-end dirt roads from the nearest ghost town, up at 8,000 feet under East Spanish Peak. Now, thank God, there's a number of people around my dad there. 2 or 3 at least. That's a number. But there was something about being able to spend that time alone. I'd go out and work on the house when it was unfinished. I would do manual labor. But out of that experience, I would have such spiritual inspiration that it generally charged me for the whole rest of the year. Spend a little bit of time alone. We spend so much of our life trying to escape being alone. Designate a little bit of it with the intent of being alone, you and the Spirit of life. What else did he say? Oneness. That inspiration comes out of oneness. When he describes his experience going down to do that first sculpture, he was the president of this art group in New York, which had contracted to do a sculpture of Thomas Edison. He's not a sculptor, but their sculptor failed them. I'm not sure what that meant, but there must be a story behind that. Somehow he ducked out on him at the last minute. And Walter said, okay, no problem. We don't have another sculptor right now. I'll do it myself, having never touched clay before in his life. And on the way down, he said what he did was commune on that sense of oneness with the Spirit within him that knew how to sculpt. Whoa. He worked He didn't so much think it out, I wonder what I'll do, I wonder what I need to do. He worked on his connection to the Spirit within. And when he got there, he just followed whatever he was inspired to do. And as he said in the book, he said it was probably a really dumb move, because if I had blown this sculpture as famous a being as Thomas Edison was and as important as this piece was, it would have ruined my entire career. But he didn't ruin it. He had a masterpiece, an absolute masterpiece for his first attempt. Well, we'd like to do masterpiece for our first attempt at whatever it is. Whether it's investing or that project we're undertaking at work. Wouldn't you like to be a master at investing the first time? Most of the rest of us learn by losing everything, right? He claims if you want to do that, it's all about the connection. Feeling in tune with the universe. It's all about a feeling. You say, no, inspiration is ideas, right? Yeah, ideas that flow out of a feeling. That feeling of knowing that I am in tune with the mind of the universe, with the mind of God. And of course, his last statement in there was, if you're in tune, it keeps you on track. It's as if it insulates you against life, which is constantly trying to knock you this way or that way. Most of life, we're just fielding ping pong balls as fast as we can. And he's saying if you move into this level of connection to the mind of the universe, you move into a space where you begin to control the game instead of just reacting. Where you begin to have a little bit of dominion over what's going on. Spirit moves through you and keeps you moving towards the life your soul desires you to live. Instead of all the crazy things the world would urge you to do. Wow. I like that idea. So, let's talk about a few things. Number one, the attitude of inspiration. Remember, I said I was going to repeat this several times. This is the one time he told you something you absolutely need if you want to experience this spiritual experience. Inspiration comes only to those who seek it with humility toward their own achievements and reverence towards the achievements of God. What happens is we get inspired, and something wonderful comes out of it, and we start thinking we're hot stuff. Hey, I'm good. Look at what I did. Isn't this great? Oh, I can do this well. And if you get to riding too high, you actually escape that level of humility through which inspiration flows, and suddenly you're on your own, and it's like you're up on high on this wave, and the wave just drops out from under you and says, okay, you do it. And generally there's a crash landing. I've ridden a wave. I remember one I rode for several years where I couldn't seem to do anything wrong, where I moved up through in the whole unity movement. People were paying attention to me, and I thought, that's strange. But in any case, and then there was a point where I started saying, hey, maybe I'm important. And that was the point where I took some of the biggest knocks I've ever taken in my life. Inspiration flows when you look out and say, hey, it's kind of like that 12-step program thing we talked about. I think it was last week or the week before. We talked about this whole idea, I may be powerless, but there is a power within me that can do anything. It takes that humility of saying, you know, I may not be smart enough, I may not be up to this, but inspiration can flow through me. It can happen. and there is reverence for it. You go, isn't it awe-inspiring to see God do something thrilling through me that I know I had nothing to do with, no matter if others try to tell me, wow, you did a great job. I know I didn't. I know that something happened through me. Inspiration is that thing where you say, did I say that? And you listen to it and go, that's really good. That's really great. Where on earth did that come from? It came from within you. Inspiration is when you look within and know things you didn't know before. And I like his description. He's described several different feelings and attitudes that come with this experience. And one of them is that you're not trying to get something that's not in there. That is wrapped up in separation. It's out there, it's not in here. You are trying to remember something that is already your inheritance. You are already connected to all the knowledge in the universe. You are not accepting a new thought. You are remembering what you previously did not know. Now, this is an attitude that's being described here. And while you're trying to tear it apart with your mind and say, well, wait a second, did I or didn't, really doesn't matter. This is an attitude of I'm simply remembering what I knew. I am allowing to surface out of that vast unconscious mind of which I am a part, that is within me. That I am connected within me to this vast unconscious mind. And I am simply allowing the knowledge that I need to surface. These are all excellent pieces of advice. In the end, you still have to learn to apply them yourself, just like he said. So his thing was constantly realize God's moving through me. I'm an outlet for divine mind. That constantly think in terms of God is inspiring me. God is inspiring me. If God is inspiring you, I don't care how badly you've messed up your life, you can get it back on track. Because anything is possible. Let go of what you think can't happen. The mind of the universe is moving through you. Anything is possible. So, let's talk about some scriptures that address the whole thing. Ask and it shall be given to you. This is Matthew 7:7-8. Seek and you shall find. Knock and it shall be opened to you. For whoever asks receives, and he who seeks finds, and to him who knocks the door is opened. The bottom line, you got to ask. Your action of asking is not because God is over there and saying, say pretty please. That's not really what's going on. Excuse me. Kierkegaard said, prayer is not for God, it's for man. I couldn't agree with him more. It's attuning ourselves to God's presence. And in the end, that's what we're attempting to do. To attune ourselves to God's presence. Listen for the inner voice. And listen long enough to hear. That was one of what he said. Listen to the inner voice long enough that you can hear something. Spend some time alone. If you have the luxury of having an extended time to go on retreat, do so. I will tell you there are stages of this. Some people get away for a weekend. They generally feel they've finished up by the end of Friday night. They're generally like, okay, now I'm bored. I did a lot of time. Now I'm uncomfortable and I'm ready to move on. And I will tell you what you want is beyond the uncomfortableness. Until you get uncomfortable, you haven't even been there and gotten started. When you truly get uncomfortable, now you know you're on your way. Stick with it. Because beyond the discomfort. You know, we start off, we do our practices, and we're so proud. Oh, I am so spiritual. I'm doing practices all the time. I am praying. Oh, am I happy with this? And finally we get, oh, I am bored. And we go, oh, I must be done because I'm bored. No, you just finally got inside the room. Beyond the boredom is where lies true inspiration. It's worth, in a retreat experience, getting through that. But if you do not have the luxury of that type of time, then spend a few moments at the beginning of every day attuning yourself, feeling the presence of the Spirit that moves through all of life, and feeling yourself in tune with that presence. The still small voice is the way we talk about it. Oh, I want to go back to ask, and I wondered what I forgot. Ask. Asking is not simply for God's purposes, it's for yours. It puts you truly in the state where you're ready to receive. Until you ask, you aren't ready to receive. There's an energy to this. Everything in life can be translated into an energy. And you need to understand the energy of asking is opening up and being ready. And you need to be willing to do it as long as it takes. Because it isn't about whether God is ready to respond to you. It's about whether you're really ready to listen. Whether the asking has truly opened you up or not. And if you're not getting a response, don't blame it on God, just ask again. Just do the process of opening up and opening up. If you ask and ask and ask, eventually you will open up to the experience. That was one of Jesus' parables about the widow who went to the judge and wanted justice on something that was happening. And the judge wasn't interested. Only the widow kept coming back and kept coming back and kept coming back. And finally he said, just to get this woman off my back. That's the Bob Marshall version of the Bible. Just to get this woman off my back, I will give her what she wants. And he said, prayer's like this. But it isn't that God is an unjust judge. It's that it may take a while to break through your own walls. The inner voice you're listening for, we all want to hear that voice. We would love it to be the booming voice that goes off real deep inside our minds and says, buy S&P futures now. And we're going to rush out and buy them, right? And I got to tell you, if it comes that way for you, more power to you, but it's never come that way for me. And for most of the people I know. That's why in the end, in unity, we talk about the still small voice. It comes out of 1 Kings 19, 11 through 13. This is Elijah. And behold, the Lord passed by, and a great and strong wind rent the mountains and broke in pieces the rocks before the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind. And after the wind, an earthquake, but the Lord was not in the earthquake. And after the earthquake, a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire, a still small voice. And when Elijah heard it, he wrapped his face in his mantle and went out and stood at the entrance of the cave. And behold, there came a voice to him and said to him, what are you doing here, Elijah? That is possibly the best explanation of that journey that we make searching for guidance that is described in the Bible. It's not in the wind. It's not in the earthquake. There are a whole lot of voices inside of you. And there are a whole lot of things happening in life. And the ones that say, listen to me, usually, though occasionally God graces us with clear guidance. But that one that's just pounding on our door that says, you really want this to happen, this will happen, this is great. That is usually not guidance. In fact, quite frankly, it usually gets you in trouble. Guidance often comes when I don't know what to do, and then you turn and say, if I really had any sense, this is what I would do. And then you go back to, I don't know what I would do. We spurt it right out, and then we go back to agonizing over not being clear on what to do. It comes as that quiet knowing that's behind everything else. The still small voice. And in Matthew 10, 18 through 20, and they will bring you before the presence of governors and kings for my sake, Jesus said. But when they deliver you up, do not worry as to how or what you will speak, for it will be given to you in that very hour what you are to speak, and it is not you who speak, but the Spirit of your Father which speaks through you. He's sending the disciples out to teach. He's sending them out by twos because they need some reinforcement. But he's also telling them something will happen through you when you go. And when you go, oh my God, how am I going to get out of this situation? You'll be given the words, whatever they are to be. Do you know that? Do you walk into situations knowing the words will come to you? Knowing you'll be inspired. In the end, that's what it's all about, and that's what Jesus fully intended for his disciples to do, not only to do, but to live by. Inspiration. Walter Russell says, intuition is the language of light through which men and God intercommunicate. I want to clear that up. Intuition versus psychic impression. We live in a day of, I want a psychic experience. No, I don't. I want intuition. Your psychic experience often comes through as this image that comes into your mind that your mind then has to think about and figure out how it fits into what you're going through. And by the time you're done analyzing it, you usually get it wrong. Then after the fact, you look back and go, oh my God, that's what that meant. Oh, it was right there. And I missed it. That's because it's coming through the mind, and the mind can tie itself in knots. Intuition comes through the heart, through feelings. Say feelings, but it's thoughts. It is the feeling of knowing. Knowing is not an intellectual thought. It's something that comes from a deep conviction within. Knowing, that's intuition. It is the direct knowing. Notice that Walter Russell had said, you will end up knowing things you did not know by just letting go and letting it surface inside of you. You'll end up knowing things. So, one more pattern I'm going to suggest. Try to feel the energies behind everything you experience and encounter. Everything in this world is an exchange of energy. Everything that happens has a character to it. And in the end, you want to be tuning in to the character, the essence of this exchange, rather than just judging what you see. When you are in a conversation, you will often listen to the energy behind something and not just the words. Because the words can tell a lie. The energies cannot. They are what they are. And so it is with all encounters. You look and you say, what's going on here? What am I supposed to be learning? Well, what's the energy of what you're facing in this situation? And gimmicks and gadgets? Oh my God, how many courses can you take on intuition in which they will show you a technique for tapping into guidance, which is supposed to be the grand shortcut? I mean, it can be a pendulum, muscle testing, the Ouija board. It can be anything you want to come up with. You say, but some of those are helpful. I agree. But they're not your answer. Real inspiration doesn't depend on a gimmick or a gadget. It comes on pure knowing. And if you use gimmicks and gadgets at the moment, great, fine. I don't have a problem with that. I'm a great believer in whatever works, use it. But please know that this is an intermediary step if you're using it. The goal is to hear that voice from within, to hear that still small voice, and to know what you need to know. So with that in mind, let's go through how we tap into the inspiration of divine mind within. And the first step is enter into consciousness of oneness with the universe. Remember? We talked about that. Oneness with God. This is where you want to start. You want to start on realizing it's not God out there and me in here. It is I am connected to divine mind. I am part of divine mind. I am thinking God's thoughts after God. I am in harmony with the mind of the universe, and the inspiration of the universe flows through me on a regular basis, and I'm going to look for it. Spend time each day alone with the universe to attune yourself. Think that you're in harmony with the whole, and be humble towards your own achievements and reverent towards God's. Yes, I can do wonderful things, but it is not me. It is, and feel the sacredness of it, the Spirit of God moving through me. And it is just thrilling to be part of it. That's the attitude. Ask for inspiration is number 2. And after you ask, persevere in asking and remain expectant for a response. If you're not expectant, you know you're not getting the response. And that knowing is your faith, and be it done to you according to your faith. So, no matter how long it takes, expect the response. Number 3, feel the energies behind whatever you see. I mentioned this earlier. This is the point at which we realize, I want to feel the essence of what I'm dealing with here. And many times this will save you. You'll walk into a situation and you realize it looks really good. Something feels wrong. And I need to not do this. Okay? And sometimes you'll say, I don't want to do that, but I really feel like I need to. Now, unfortunately, there are many voices inside of you. So, step number 4, pay attention. Constantly look for flashes of inspiration. You're going to watch for what pops up in your mind. Something pops up, you pay attention to it and say, I wonder why that came up. Wonder why that's going on. There was a period of my life where I got into consciously trying to work with that spirit within me, and I figured maybe I can't hear it, but I know it can hear me. So here we go, and I would often say, whatever. You'll remember, we'd go into counseling and I'd say, okay, Christ Spirit within, work it out with their Christ Spirit. Tell me when we're done. In the meantime, I'm going to entertain. And because the pressure was off, I would often say whatever popped into my mind. And what was amazing to me was that I'd go all over the place. They'd say it was in this area, and I'd say, well, what about this area over here? And darn if that wasn't where the problem was. I found it amazing what popped into my mind, and that when I did it, amazing things followed. Look for a quiet knowing in the background of your thoughts. We're paying attention now. Pay attention. I'm agonizing over this, I'm agonizing over that, but real guidance is the still small voice, right? It's that moment when you really know something. When you quietly know, it would be wisest to move this way. Then you tear it apart with your intellect and ruin it. Now, if you think you have guidance, don't tear it apart with your intellect. Use it in a timely basis. You know, often guidance has an expiration date, and sometimes it's not that long. The bottom line is, I have so often had the right guidance and not enough courage to use it in time. Got it? But let's say you use it and it turns out badly. As I said, there are many voices inside of you, learning which one is guidance and which is greed, fear. Oh, there's a whole bunch more in there. Learning to distinguish it is done by trial and error. That's how human beings learn. So consequently, you follow your guidance and it didn't turn out well. Then remember what it felt like. Go back over it. What was the feeling that was that? And when you have guidance, whether you followed it or not, and it would have turned out well or it did turn out well, go back and examine that feeling until you become aware enough that you know what real guidance feels like. That's the trial and error. And every time you fail, don't just clobber yourself over the head. Just realize this is one step closer to knowing what it really feels like. If I made no mistakes, I would never have explored the areas that are subtly like guidance but aren't, and learned what to avoid. So mistakes are part of the process. Don't be hard on yourself. Just get up and keep going down the path. You must discover for yourself what that voice feels like within you. And then number 5, remember you already know, you just need to remember. What you want to do is you want to strive to remember your inheritance of inspiration. As long as you're trying to get something out there in here, you're still living in a consciousness of separation. Only when you say, it's within me, I'm just trying to let it surface. That's when you're back in that consciousness of oneness. And last, number 6, obsess on inspiration and guidance. That's what he said. He said, do it almost constantly. Don't ever make a decision simply on what your mind tells you. Take the decision your mind tells you and then examine the feelings around it. Does it feel right? Does it not? And then whatever you do, however you make your decisions, you do this, what is it they call it in the military? Debriefing with yourself. And you go back over, what did that feel like and what were the results? But you obsess on it constantly. In the end, we want to be in a state of constantly living our lives out of guidance. You go, then I don't have to think? Au contraire. You do have to think. You will be thinking constantly, but you will be, every decision you make, you will be putting up against this final judgment to give greater depth to the understanding by which you're trying to live your life. It's worth obsessing on this. It's worth looking for guidance in every decision, and inspiration, looking for inspiration in every undertaking that you take on, feeling the essence of everything you encounter, not just this is such. What does that really feel like? People, they have an essence, and none of them are the same. I call it the texture of their being. It is a feeling of texture. Each person feels a little bit different. If you look in your eyes and you let go of your thoughts, you will feel a texture. And there's a texture to experiences. There is a texture to conversational encounters. And as you begin to feel the texture and not just the outer physical exchange, you open up what I call the world of the heart, the intuition of the heart. And you open up a whole realm of information that more than doubles the information that you've been making your decisions on. And suddenly, you're doing a lot better job. Because you're not only examining it with your mind, you're feeling it with your heart. It evolves into a way of life that has a greater potential for keeping you on track and helping you to avoid all those disasters along the way that life would love to watch you go through, or the world would love to watch you go through. Let's put it that way. So the bottom line. Today we're talking about tapping into inner genius. Nobody can tell you exactly how to do it, but you can find it for yourself. And when we do it, puts us back on track for fulfilling the life that our soul desires for us. And your soul desires good things for you, so it's not worth worrying about whether it's going to be fun or not. Your soul desires for you your highest good. And by moving into that state of connecting to the mind of universe, we essentially move back into co-creation with God. We move into realizing that God and I are creating this life. And together, anything is possible. Think of the infinite possibilities in front of you. If you truly are aware of the mind of the universe, thinking through me. If I have access to all the knowing I need, I can do anything. Anything my soul desires. And there's no pit too big that I've dug myself into that inspiration cannot levitate me out of. So let's relax for just a moment. Father, we know your presence is within us as inspiration, just waiting there for us to recognize that you were there, inspiring and guiding us. Give us the strength to get ourselves out of the way. And to hear your still small voice. And the courage to follow it. Thy will be done through each and every one of us. Amen.
This is Reverend Bob Marshall, and I want to thank you for joining us on this journey through exploring how to tap into the secrets of the universe. I also want to thank Brian Eitnire, who provided the music for our program. Thank you again.